Arcade Heroes.
Hey everyone, this is Adam with ArcadeHeroes.com, and welcome to this brief vlog about the game of the decade. So, a few weeks ago, on December 3rd, 2019, I put up a birthday post for Arcade Heroes. That's when the site turned 13 years old. But also, since it's the end of a decade, decided to run a poll there, asking you for what was your pick for the video game of the decade, as well as the pinball machine of the decade. Now, when I say video game of the decade, did limit that to arcade machines, like a traditional arcade machine should be, and not all video games or everything that calls itself an arcade game, like you'd find on Steam under the arcade category, or Xbox Live Arcade, or any of that, because those aren't arcade games like what we talk about on ArcadeHeroes.com. We talk about coin-operated, self-contained arcade machines. Like when I say the word arcade, the first thing that pops to your mind, that kind of game, and not something that's an arcade genre. Even though we have thousands of followers across YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and all those social media sites, we didn't get a huge response on the poll, unfortunately. I would have liked to have had a lot more. We only had 126 votes that came through on the video side and only 58 on the pinball side. But regardless, the polls closed. I did advertise it as much as I could. And so now I'll present to you the top 3 picks in each of the genres, video, arcade, and pinball machines, as to what you, the readers, decided upon. And if you don't agree with it because you didn't vote, well, then you should have voted. But if you did vote and your thing didn't win, well, I'm sorry, but I'm still sure it was a great game, because there was a lot of good games released this decade. I mean, I know there's still people out there who think that anything after 1993 and a half or whatever sucks or whatever, but you know, I don't care about that. I'm just gonna focus on what's still fun, what's good out there. And so for the 3rd place game that was picked on the video arcade side, it was Mario Kart Arcade GP DX by Bandai Namco Amusements. That was released in 2014, and it's done really well on the market. When I talked about that game with Namco a couple of years ago, they were saying it was just doing phenomenal. Even though it had been released years ago, they were still getting in a ton of orders on that one, and orders shot up after they made it an offline game, because it initially started off as it had to be online and there was a monthly fee and all that. But once that was gone, then a lot of venues jumped onto that for obvious reason. The second game picked by you, the readers, was Jurassic Park Arcade by Raw Thrills. Now, this was released in 2015, and at the arcade where I'm at, my own arcade in Utah, I've had a Jurassic Park since that time, and it's often been my #1 earning game. And so it's just done a phenomenal job on earnings. It paid for itself in a very quick span of time. From a gameplay perspective, it's like, you know, a lot of other mounted shooters. You don't have to reload. You get power-ups. You shoot dinosaurs. It has 9 levels, which is nice. So it's not something that's over in just a few minutes. Of course, there's always that thing about the gameplay maybe not always treating you fairly as a player, getting in some cheap shots and taking away your health all of a sudden. But that aside, it's done a really good job on the market. It's very popular. Shooting dinosaurs is always popular, but you know, so as an operator, it's been one of my favorites for obvious reasons, and it's a solid game. There was a motion version of it released as well, although that wasn't as well known. And then for your #1 game, the game that was picked as Game of the Decade is, by coincidence, the game that's right behind me, and that is Taito's Dariusburst, Another Chronicle. Now, of course, not a lot of people have played this game in its arcade form, because in the United States there are only 3, maybe 4 locations that I know of, mine being one of them, that has this game. As far as I know, I'm the only place that has this in English. The other places have the EX version, which is in Japanese. The English version also was in the UK at the earlier part of the decade. But even though it doesn't have the influence of something like Jurassic Park Arcade, it hasn't seen the sales, as a game itself, which is what I'm guessing that a lot of people voted on, it's a phenomenal game. There's a lot of stuff to it. Maybe I'll do a playthrough on this in 4K since I haven't done a playthrough in a little while after I talk about the pins. But this is the game that by 10 votes won. Well, it got 10 votes total, and Jurassic Park Arcade got 8, and Mario Kart DX got 7 out of 126. And so there were a lot of options on that poll, and some of you mentioned online what your picks were, so thank you for sharing that on Twitter, Facebook, and on the site itself. But yeah, so this is the game, and so again, I'll play this in a few minutes. But first, let's talk about the top 3 picks for Pinball Machines of the Decade, and the one that is the Pinball Machine of the Decade, according to you, the readers. Alright, and also by whatever coincidence, and I promise I didn't rig the poll or anything like that. I didn't do anything with the votes. I just threw it out there. Threw out a bunch of games on each poll. The video arcade poll had I think 50 options, 53 options. The pinball poll, not as many options, but I tried to get as many games as I could on there that I figured that would be worth the effort to poll about. But for the top 3 on there, we have Jurassic Park Pinball coming in at number 3 with 5 votes, and that's actually right over here. I do have that game as well that I got in a short time ago. Number 2 was Dialed In by Jersey Jack Pinball, and that got 6 votes. Also, that being a game by Pat Lawlor, one of the first original titles to come out. And then, of course, is the game that we had here initially. Sorry, we're moving around so much, and that's Ghostbusters by Stern Pinball. And so this is the Pinball Machine of the Decade according to the Arcade Readers, ArcadeHeroes.com poll. And so this is a fantastic game. I've got the Pro version here. The Premium, of course, is a little bit better than the Pro. Over there I had the Jurassic Park Pro dialed in as a limited edition, which is their equivalent of Premium. But ever since we got this game in, it's been doing really well, and it's a fun game. If you liked the original Ghostbusters, it is really the perfect game. As I have another video on my channel somewhere where it's 7.5 minutes of movie lines that it plays like when you touch the flipper buttons.
You said Crossing the Streams was bad.
It plays one of those clips, mostly from the first Ghostbusters. There are a few that pop in there from Ghostbusters 2, but that helps give this game a real sense of it captures the humor of the films because it uses the license really well, and that's one complaint I have about Jurassic Park. And of course they can fix this with code updates, but it just is really Jurassic Park's lacking a lot of those one-liners and whatnot from the films, and so that kind of holds it back from being really good. But I mean, it's still a fun game. It's a fun table, but Ghostbusters is hard to beat from the humor.
We're gonna play Twister. We're gonna do some breakdancing.
Yes, we will. So again, Dariusburst, Another Chronicle by Taito is the video arcade game of the decade, and Ghostbusters Pinball by Stern Pinball is the pinball machine of the decade. So thanks to all of those that voted in the polls. And if you see these games out there, be sure to give them a spin. And it'll be interesting to see what comes along in the 2020s as well. And of course, through the 10s, I think there have been plenty of influential games and games that are worth mentioning. One game that did get a few votes on the poll on the video arcade side was Killer Queen Arcade, which I think that from an influence perspective, that was a huge influence on creating a bunch of other independently made games. And while it wasn't the first indie arcade game that came out, it was the first to really drive a lot of the developments that have been going on, like Cosmotrons and Galactic Battlegrounds and some others, and showing developers that, hey, you can make an arcade machine today. And so that's certainly worth mentioning. And on the pinball side, I think Wizard of Oz is definitely worth mentioning as well, because before Wizard of Oz came along by Jersey Jack Pinball, pinball was stagnant, it was stale. and it wasn't really trying to innovate. And so Wizard of Oz did a bunch of innovative things with the RGB LEDs and the HD screen and a couple of other ideas that I think really shook up the industry and moved things around. And so from an influence perspective, it's definitely worth mentioning out there. And then, of course, there are others who have been hard at work in making some machines that are trying to do innovations. You have American Pinball, and they're doing Houdini and Oktoberfest. You have Spooky Pinball with Rob Zombie's Spook Show, and of course the most recent one, Rick and Morty Pinball, which sold out very quickly. And so, yeah, it's going to be an exciting time in the 2020s. So thanks for following and reading the site. Thanks to those of you who voted, and keep on gaming. Alright, so I'm going to do some gameplay from the Arcade Heroes Game of the Decade winner, Dariusburst, Another Chronicle by Taito. And I've had this English version since 2012. As far as I'm aware, only 7 units were ever built or sold with the English software. So there are some other models out there that are in Japanese that you might come across, but pretty rare game. Now it is available on consoles as Dariusburst, Dariusburst Chronicle Saviors, I think it's called, on the PlayStation 4 and PC. There was also a version released for Apple iOS devices years ago. But just kind of help you see how fantastic a game this is. Now, it was really made to be a multiplayer game, and that's one of the things I like about it is the power-ups, which are these little orbs you see floating around, they are shared. So with most shoot-'em-up games, just whoever grabs it gets it. But this one, it has that little wave that sticks around for a little bit, and the other player can grab that and also gain the power-up. And another cool thing is you can flip your direction so that you can shoot at things behind you, which that's always been an irritant for me on shoot-'em-ups, is when you can't shoot things behind you. So it's nice that this game lets you do that. It has some other depth too, as you see these guys doing their burst lasers, which are those little turret lasers that you can lay down. You can lay those down and can control their direction, or you can just fire a big blast to do more damage, but it ends quicker. But the smaller ones work as crowd control a lot of the time. So if you really learn the nuances of how this works and how it controls like that, combining 2 burst lasers together from 2 good players, I mean, it just really adds all this depth to the game, and so it's a really entertaining, satisfying game to play. And so it's just really too bad that more places didn't pick this up. Taito was really selling it. Another thing is that it's just jam-packed with content. There's the original mode, which gives you the 3 difficulty levels. You play a level, fight a boss, move on. I'm going to do Chronicle mode, which has a ton more stuff to it. There's also infinite lives, where if you insert more coins, you can die as much as you want, but it doesn't save your score. And in Chronicle mode, you're supposed to liberate star systems, and if you do infinite ships, it doesn't allow you to liberate them either. So how this works is it has all these star systems, and these star systems, these sectors are broken up into these star systems, and they all have these rules that have to be obeyed to liberate it. So you have to play through the whole thing, follow the rule. This one, like fixed equipment rule, attack boost rule, I mean, they're pretty straightforward. You can't really lose them unless you just don't finish. Attack boost means you only get attack power-ups, increases your shot. 2 players only, you have to play with 2 players, so I can't do that right now. Fixed equipment, you just use whatever they give you. It also shows the difficulties here. There's an extreme difficulty one. I need something relatively short. Legend Silverhawk. So the rule on this one is it has to be beat on 1 credit, which I haven't played this game much until today. It's been a while since I played it. I used to play it all the time, and it just got away from me. So I'm a bit rusty. You can also use a burst laser as a shield, like this, but it is limited. It regenerates when certain enemy shots hit it. Do need to open the glass and clean it out in there. It's just a little difficult to do that. I don't want to break the glass. I kind of hate this boss. But I've forgotten some of the tactics. It's always nice when you can get up close so your bombs can do much damage. It's always a high risk, high reward type of thing, because you have to go within his beam to do it. The time just right. One more level. Let's see if I can do it. Increase the hit points of the bosses to keep the challenge balanced out. I do have to say, I just love the soundtrack on this game. It was available on CD and digitally. I have the CD version. I think it's from Age. It's done by Taito. It's very well crafted. Unliberated areas in the star system stands at only 46. So, yeah, with the unlocked B, there's 2,048 star systems to liberate. So, it gives you plenty. Well, they did it for the community, to bring the community together and play through it. So in Japan, I think a lot of the units have all been cleared, all the star systems liberated. Can't fit Arcade Hero in there, so I'll just go with an old nickname. But yeah, that's Dariusburst, another Chronicle video arcade game of the decade. And thanks for watching, and if you ever do come across this one, definitely give it a spin. If not though, check it out on PC or PS4. It's still an excellent game. And thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next video.